Afterglow Movie Net, Saturday, 10:30 p.m., W5FC. This is the W5FC repeater, PL110.9. Meeting on the air first and third Sunday, 7 p.m., W5FC.
Mr. Chairman, I need to make myself very clear. If we uplink now, Skynet will be in control of your military.
But you'll be in control of Skynet, right?
That is correct, sir.
Skynet.
Does anyone need to use the repeater before we begin the 9 p.m. Skynet? This is KF5PDS. My name is Billye, and I'll be your net control for this session of the DARC Skynet. Skynet is a weekly net called every Saturday night at 9 p.m. concerning the subject of astronomy. Our purpose is to help amateurs become more familiar with the nighttime and daytime sky, astronomy, and space in general. This net is open to all amateurs interested in this topic, and we encourage your participation, comments, and suggestions for this net. Stations with priority or emergency traffic may enter the net at any time by using the pro sign break and your call sign. Is there any emergency or priority traffic? This is a directed net. Please do not transmit without direction from net control. That would be me. And stations are reminded to ID at the end of your transmissions. This weekly net operates on 146.880 megahertz with a PL tone of 110.9. Check-ins via Echolink are also possible using the W5FC-R station ID or Echolink node 37247. Tonight's topics, astronomy charts, pictures, and live audio-video links are available online. Go to www.w5fc.org right now for the complete list. And remember to tell others about this popular net. You can now check into the net electronically by going to the club website, W5FC.org. Look for tonight's announcement and click on the hot link to check in. We will acknowledge you on the air, and don't worry, if you want to check in via voice, we will continue to do that too over air and Echolink. All amateur operators are welcome. You need not be a member of any amateur radio club to participate. The net is 90 minutes long and is structured in several parts. General announcements, Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas events, where and when you can look through a telescope, National Space Society events, recent astronomical discoveries, discussion topic of the evening, Was Up, space exploration and space history, Constellation of the week, space launches of the week, visible satellite passages over the next couple of days, astronomical Q&A, and our 73 round. All amateurs licensed to transmit on this frequency are invited to check in. We currently have the following people checked in via W5FC.org. We have Alpha Golf 9 Sierra Golf, Antonio in Dallas, over air radio, N5LIG, Dale in Dallas, online Echolink, myself, KF5PDS, on Echolink, KE5ICX, Tom, Corpus Christi on the All-Star Link, WB5OZL, Brenda in Dallas, online Echolink, AA5AH, Robert in Richardson, over air radio, KF5JHA, Chaz and Bob the Cat, in Texas, multiple modes, and N5BB Bill in Irving, over air radio. So that's who we have checked in on our club website spreadsheet. Now let's start with voice check-ins, starting with short time check-ins. So if you're checking in a short time to the net, please come now with your call sign name and where you're transmitting from this evening. Okay, not hearing any short time, so we'll move on to general check-ins. So again, if you're checking into the net via general check-in, come now with your call sign name and where you're transmitting from.
This is Whiskey 5 Golf Uniform Sierra. It's Gus, far northeast Dallas.
This is November Tango 5, Tango Mike, Tony, here in Bird City. I wonder if somebody forgot to publish tonight's post for Skynet on W5FC.org.
Kilo Foxtrot 5, Zulu, Bravo, Lima, Bill, Farmers Branch.
This is Alpha Golf 5, Papa Mike, Rich in Rockwell, AG 5 p.m.
Kilo 5, Mike, Charlie, Delta, Cody in Dallas.
All right, let's grab those. And to answer Tony, NT5TM, yes, the club website is showing last week's information, but the link will go to tonight's spreadsheet because I checked in that way, and it went to the spreadsheet that I was sent for tonight. So if you do use the link on W5FC.org, it will come up on my sheet tonight. So you can go ahead and check in via that link. So let me go ahead and recognize everyone that's checked in so far. W5GUS, Gus, far northeast Dallas. NT5TM, Tony in Bird City. KF5ZDL, Bill in Farmers Branch. AG5PM, Rich in Rockwall, and K5MCD, Cody in Dallas. Do we have anyone else that would like to check in via RF? If so, please come now with your call sign name and where you're transmitting from. Okay, not hearing any, so we'll move over to Echolink, and I think everyone, I'm looking at the Echolink list, the only one that has not checked in that's on Echolink is KD5LQD, Jimmy, which I don't know if you have a microphone tonight, Jimmy. If you do, I'll give you time to check in. If not, you can just reply in the chat. Otherwise, I've got you down, but I'll give you an opportunity to check in if you would like to do so. Okay, well, I got you down, Jimmy, so thank you for joining. Now let's open it up to open round check-ins. Anyone, any mode, if you would like to check into this evening's net, please come now with your call sign name and where you're transmitting from, any mode.
Kilo 9 Alpha Hotel Oscar, Brian in Dalty, Texas.
Thank you, Brian. I'm sorry I did not get your call sign. If you could repeat that just a little bit slower so I can write it down. And you said it was Billye. Could you spell that also? I'm not familiar with that town.
Sure. It's Kilo 9er Alpha Hotel Oscar. The name is Brian, and I'm in Dalty, Texas. Tango Alpha Lima Yankee. It's very close to Terrell. K9AHL.
Okay, got that time. Kilo 9er Alpha Hotel Oscar, Brian in Cali, Texas. And I know where the Terrell area is, so welcome. Does anyone else, any mode, would like to check in? If so, please come now with your call sign, name, and where you're transmitting from.
This is Whiskey Bravo 4 Mike Foxtrot India WB4MFI Ted Dallas Low Power.
Kilo Golf 5, Zulu Mike Golf, Joe in Arlington.
Great. I get net recognizes WB4MFI, Ted in Dallas, Low Power, and KG5ZMG, Joe in Arlington. And looking at our list over here, I also see that NV5F, Virginia in Fort Worth, Over Air Radio has checked in. And I see that Tony and Brian have used our sheet over there in Dalty, Texas. So I see that y'all have checked in via our club website check-in sheet. So we'll go ahead and move on with this evening's net. So welcome to all who have checked into Skynet. We'll get started with general announcements. Do we have anyone, general announcements for this evening's net? These can be ham, astronomical, space, or of general interest to licensed hams. If you have an announcement, please come now with your call sign.
November Tango 5, Tango Mike.
And T5TM, Tony over there in Bird City. What announcements do you have for us this evening? And good evening.
Good evening, Billy. Of course, this net is about intelligence, but no net about intelligence would be complete without a following net about silliness. So, of course, we have the Afterglow movie discussion tonight. Our movie is Moontrap from 1989. Its two redeeming features are that it has Walter Koenig and Bruce Campbell in it. And amazingly, someone actually spent money to make this movie. At least Moontrap is only about an hour and 23 minutes long, and it was good for some laughs. Please join us here tonight at 10:30 or 10:35 or so to discuss this cinematic spectacle. Now, also on an intelligent note, but possibly with some laughs, GeekNet is this Monday. Please join us at 7 p.m. local time on this repeater. All topics that you think are geeky, ham radio related or not, are welcome. And please don't forget that field day entries are due on, or maybe before, July 29th. The ARRL is not very clear about that, and I never wait till the last minute anyway. So please do turn in a field day entry if you participated from your own station instead of, or in addition to, participating with a club that does the paperwork for you. I know a lot of hams who went to parks by themselves or who operated from home. The ARRL does rely on these statistics. They like to be able to talk about ham, particularly when they're dealing with the FCC and strange applications from people who want to take our spectrum, how many thousands of amateurs are active and participating on the air each year. So please, if you did participate in field day, turn your paperwork in. Anyway, thank you for listening. Back to net, NT5TM.
Great, thank you very much, Tony. And while you were giving announcements, I noticed that KE5JIT, Randy over there in Corpus Christi over Air Radio, has checked in on our website, so welcome, Randy. Okay, let me go ahead with some announcements. The AMSAT Radio Amateur Satellite Group has 3 nets available to Dallas residents. On Tuesday evenings at 8 p.m. Central Time, you can check into the National AMSAT Net, learn all about amateur satellites and how you can use them in amateur radio. The National AMSAT Net will bring the most up-to-date information on amateur satellites currently in use or new ones coming online. You will need Echolink installed and you registered. You can find the net under Groups and AMSAT. Also, a live audio link is available on their website at www.amsatnet.com. This net originates in Houston, Texas. 2 local nets are available in Dallas. Both of these nets encourage active check-ins. You can ask questions of the net control as well as others checked in. AMSAT Net East, Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas, is every Tuesday at 8 p.m. on this repeater, 146.880 megahertz, with a PL tone of 110.9. Tom N5HYP is the net control. All are welcome to check in. The first Tuesday of the month is the DARC club night, so there is no AMSAT East on that Tuesday night. The Dallas AMSAT Net West is every Wednesday at 9 p.m. on the Arlington repeater, 147.140 megahertz, with a PL tone of 110.9 and a positive offset. The DARC hosts a number of nets on Monday evenings at 7 p.m. You can check the W5FC.org website. This coming Monday, will be a GeekNet. Geek Beyond Ham Radio. This Monday, Geek Out Beyond Ham Radio. We extend topics to computers, science, space, news of the weird, and all things geeky. So join us for Fourth Monday Geek Nets. Saturdays are the Night of Nets, where we keep the airwaves buzzing until midnight. Here's the lineup. TechNet from 7 to 8 p.m., Q&A on all things ham radio related. There's also a swap meet, Rookies Corner, news and information, and ham radio events and contests, alternating net control each week. And at 9 p.m. is Skynet from 9 to 10:30 p.m. Astronomy, space, and space exploration are the topics. Also, news and information, satellite passages, and the constellation of the week. Join this popular net about ham's second most favorite hobby, astronomy, alternating net controls. Afterglow Movie Net from 10:30 to midnight. Will it be a hit or the dreaded miss? Thumbs up or thumbs down? You make the call. First and third Sundays is the Dallas Amateur Radio Club meeting on the air. What's going on in your ham world? Tell us. Also learn about the club that maintains this popular repeater, the Dallas Amateur Radio Club. Club news and information, events, activities, including club meetings, lecture and lab, public service events, contests, and just general discussion. Everyone can check into this net. Daily, there is the ARRLNet National Traffic System Training Net every night at 6:30 p.m. Central Time. Learn how message traffic is handled on this formal training net. Newbies are welcome to check in, as this is a training net. The NTS also conducts an evening net on the Irving repeater, Whiskey Alpha 5, Charlie Kilo Foxtrot, repeater 146.72 megahertz at 9:30 p.m. All are welcome to check in to any or all of these nets. And as mentioned before, following Skynet is the Afterglow Movie Net. So at this time, I will turn the net over to Tom KE5ICX to read tonight's Afterglow info from KF5PDS.
Well, thank you, Billy. This is KE5ICX. Tom down in Corpus Christi. Here is the synopsis for tonight's movie. Walter Koenig gave his one and only line from Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. What he said and what was written down were two different things. You lie! On Ceti Alpha 5, there was life, a fair chance. The director shouted, cut. They finally got the shot. Ricardo Montalban downed his third mimosa and said, I can't believe this guy ever got out of acting preschool, much less show up in a fully fledged movie with camera and film. Koenig knew he was in over his head. The most acting he'd done was as tactical officer from the TV series, firing photon torpedoes with a fake Russian accent was the extent of his thespian experience. But an extra came up to him and whispered in his ear, hey, I've got a business proposition. Would you like to star in a major motion picture being filmed in my backyard in Detroit? I'll give you top billing as Walter Koenig from Star Trek, the failed TV series. Koenig couldn't refuse, plus his rent was due in a few days. Join us for Moontrap from 1988, a movie even you, the audience, could have made. Tonight at 10:30 p.m. And if you must see it, you can go to the W5FC.org website, look for Moontrap under the description. I did put it up. I got it up. And you'll see it down there, and you can kind of zip through the movie while you're doing this net, if you want to. That's it. Billy, back to you. This is KE5ICX.
Great, thank you, Tom. You can keep up with all the DARC events, nets, and activities by going to the club website, W5FC.org. And doing a quick check over on our sheet, we've got everybody checked in through the club website, so thank you for checking in using our website link. I'll take additional voice check-ins at this time, so if you have just joined the net and have not checked in yet, please go ahead and check in with your call sign, name, and where you're transmitting from.
This is Kilo Golf 5 Whiskey Victor Lima, James in Carrollton.
Great. The net recognizes Kilo Golf 5 Whiskey Victor Lima, James in Carrollton. Do we have anyone else that would like to check into this evening's net? If so, please come now with your call sign, name, and where you're transmitting from. Okay, not hearing anyone, so we'll go ahead with our next segment, Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas events, where and when you can look through a telescope. So at this time, I will turn the net over to Chaz, KF5JHA. The net is yours from KF5PDS.
Thank you, Billy. It was great seeing you last weekend. Let's see now. On July the 25th, that was last night, was the last Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas Club meeting. The meeting was held at 7:30 p.m. in person at the University of Texas at Dallas. There's also a Zoom component, too. The featured speaker was Dr. Stella Ostner from UT Austin. She was talking about AI data analysis in astronomy. That was pretty good. Now, the next club meeting in August, we don't have a featured speaker yet, so if we figure that out, I'll let you know. Now, the TASS hosts the Saturday night observing sessions on, throughout the Dallas area. Skynet was picked to be on Saturday night, so there could be an opportunity for live reports from the Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas public observing sessions. Now, unfortunately, on the fourth Saturday of the month, that would be tonight, there's no scheduled stargazing. But it wouldn't have happened anyway with all the clouds out there and even rain in parts of the area. So let's see now. Check the TASS website at texasastro.org for up-to-date information and details about meetings and public observing sessions. And this is KF5JJ, back to our net control.
Great, thank you, Chaz. This is KF5TDS Billye, your net control for this session of the DARC Skynet. Next up is National Space Society events and activities. So at this time, I will turn the net over to Bill, N5BB. The net is yours from KF5PDS.
Thank you, Billy. This is N5BB, November 5, Bravo, Bravo. I am the Vice President and the Membership Director of the North Texas section of the National Space Society. The National Space Society is a nonprofit group based in the U.S. which is interested in the exploration and development of space and the creation of a spacefaring civilization. Our local National Space Society chapter website is ntx.nss.org. Our group also has an active Facebook page. Just type National Space Society of North Texas into the search box. On Saturday, July the 19th, the National Space Society North Texas chapter participated in the Moon Day event at the Frontiers of Flight Museum in Dallas. We got our picture taken with an astronaut, etc., etc. It was a lot of fun. And we got some new members also that signed up for our group at that meeting. At that event, I should say, at the museum. The North Texas chapter of the National Space Society meets at 3:30 p.m. on the second Sunday afternoon of each month. The meeting location is Spring Creek Barbecue on the southwest corner of Highway 183 and Beltline Road in Irving. The next chapter meeting will be Sunday afternoon, August the 10th. Our meetings are also available virtually using WebEx. Contact Bill in 5DB if you'd like to attend. On the last Friday evening of each month, from 6 to 8 p.m., the National Space Society North Texas chapter sponsors a social event called Space Rendezvous. The location is Cheddar's Restaurant, 700 West Highway 635 in Irving. Anyone is welcome to attend and discuss human activities in space with us. No membership in any group is required. Either 10 or 11 people, I lost count, attended the July 25th Space Rendezvous event yesterday evening. I think that was a new record for how many people we had there. The next Space Rendezvous event will be held on Friday evening, August the 29th. It's always the last Friday evening of the month at 6 p.m. If you have any questions about the National Space Society or the local North Texas chapter, please contact Bill, November 5 Bravo Bravo, at my QRZ listed email address or at space@byrom.net. That's space@byrom.net. And that's all I've got tonight, Billy. This is Inside DB. Back to net.
Great, thank you, Bill. All right, next up is recent astronomical discoveries. So at this time, I'll turn the net over to Brenda, WB5OZL. The net is yours from KFIP.
Thank you, Billy. This is WB5OZL. This article is entitled, "These Mysterious Stars Could Glow Forever Using Dark Matter." A new kind of cosmic object could help solve one of the universe's greatest mysteries, dark matter. Particle astrophysicists have proposed the existence of a strange new type of star-like object called a dark dwarf, which may be quietly These unusual objects are powered by dark matter, the invisible substance thought to make up about a quarter of the universe. The discovery comes from a UK-US research team, and the full research findings has been published in the Journal of Cosmology and Astroparticle Physics. Using theoretical models, the scientists suggest that dark matter can get trapped inside young stars, producing enough energy to stop them from cooling and turning them into stable, long-lasting objects they call dark dwarfs. Dark dwarfs are thought to form from brown dwarfs, which are often described as failed stars. Brown dwarfs are too small to sustain the nuclear fusion that powers most stars, so they cool and fade over time. But if they sit in a dense pocket of dark matter, like near the Milky Way center, they could capture dark matter particles. If these particles then collide and destroy each other, they release energy, keeping the dark dwarf glowing indefinitely. The existence of these objects depends on dark matter being made of specific kinds of particles known as WIMPs, weakly interacting massive particles. These are heavy particles that barely interact with ordinary matter but could annihilate with one another inside stars, providing the energy needed to keep a dark dwarf alive. I'm going to reset. To tell dark dwarfs apart from other faint objects like brown dwarfs, the scientists point to a unique clue, lithium. The researchers believe dark dwarfs could still contain a rare form of lithium called lithium-7. In normal stars, lithium-7 gets burned up quickly, so if they find an object that looks like a brown dwarf but still has lithium-7, that's a strong hint it's something different. Study co-author Dr. Dejuna Krohn of Durham University said the discovery of dark dwarfs in the galactic center would give us a unique insight into the particle nature of dark matter. The team believes that telescopes like the James Webb Space Telescope could already be capable of spotting dark dwarfs, especially when focusing on the center of the galaxy. Another approach might be to look at many similar objects and statistically determine whether some of them could be dark dwarfs. Finding just one of these dark dwarfs, the researchers say, would be a major step towards uncovering the true nature of dark matter. Okay, back to net. This is WB5OZL.
Awesome. Thank you, Brenda. All right, next up is discussion topic of the evening. So tonight for my topic, I'm going to go through my presentation that I did for Moon Day, and Chaz and Bill, I saw y'all. It was really great to see y'all at Moon Day. I did stop by the DARC table and saw Travis talking with folks, and they had a lot of activity going on over at the DARC table. The Frontiers of Flight Museum near Love Field in Dallas is a great museum just to visit on any given day. They have very knowledgeable volunteers, but on the third Saturday of July is Moon Day, and so we celebrate not only the Apollo missions, but space exploration in general, and so there is a lot of activity, many societies, planetarium show. They have an inflatable planetarium. They have all kinds of things. And as Bill mentioned, every year we have a keynote speaker. This year it was astronaut Tony Antonelli. He was really great to listen to. He was very focused on taking questions from the audience and was even willing to give a few minutes to each person to ask questions and talk a little bit as he did pictures and autographs. I asked him what it was like to be a test pilot. And so he told me, spent a minute or two talking to me about that experience. So it was really great to meet him. All right, so tonight for my NCS topic, I'm just going to go through my presentation that I did for Moon Day. So tonight I'm going to share how to take your own awesome pictures of the moon. All right, Slide Master, slide number 2, please. So welcome. In today's presentation, we're going to cover different types of photos that you can do with different types of cameras. So first we're going to look at point and shoot with a telescope, a DSLR with and without a telescope, and also give some helpful resources and tips on how to take pictures. And the picture that's shown there on the slide is one that I took with my telescope and my point and shoot camera with a 25mm eyepiece. So the moon photos that you see are my own photos that I've taken with my setup. All right, Slide Master, next slide, please. Slide number 3. So before we get started, we'll cover some basic terms that apply to photography in general. And these will help you just with taking pictures. This will obviously help you with moon photos, but this is also applies to just general photography. The first concept is aperture. So this is the size of the lens opening, which is measured in f-stops. And talking with folks at Moon Day, their favorite f-stop to use for lunar was f11. So they said they called it lunar 11. A larger number means that it's a smaller opening for the lens. So if you have a low f number, you have what's called a shallow depth of field, where your close-up object is clear, but the background is blurry. And depending on the photo that you're trying to take, you may want that effect. But for moon photos, you're probably going to want a higher f number to give you a deeper depth of field so that everything is in focus. The next basic concept is exposure time, which is also known as the shutter speed. This determines the length of time that the camera's sensor is exposed to light, so how fast or slow that shutter is opening and closing. These are measured in seconds or fractions of a second. So for like a full moon, you may want 1/1000th of a second, but during a lunar eclipse, you may want a full second. Or you may be doing pictures of different objects where you want several seconds. So your exposure time is going to dictate how fast that shutter opens and closes. And obviously a longer exposure time is going to let in more light. So darker objects, you may want a longer exposure time. And the third concept is ISO, which stands for International Organization for Standardization. This was originally used to define sensitivity of photographic film to light. So if you remember film photography and you went and bought canisters of film, it had the ISO rating on that canister, and every bit of film in that canister was at that one ISO. And if you wanted to shoot a different ISO, you had to purchase different film. And that could be expensive depending on the type of film that you were shooting on. But today it refers to the sensitivity of a camera's sensor to light. And a lower ISO means less sensitivity. You'll get a cleaner image with less noise or grain. So if you're shooting at a higher ISO, you will get more noise in the picture. And I didn't cover it in this talk, but in astrophotography in general, we talk about techniques of how to get rid of noise in photographs. But since you're shooting the moon at a lower ISO, you tend to get cleaner images with less noise, so you don't really have to do any techniques to reduce the noise. I did recommend a book, Understanding Exposure by Brian Peterson. I have the 3rd edition, but the 4th edition is currently on sale for about $15 on Amazon. It is an excellent book. It not only goes over this theory in more depth, but he also covers more terminology and also provides practical, hands-on examples that you can set your own camera to, and he provides pictures that were shot at those settings, and so you could see the effects, and then you could work to achieve those with your own equipment. So it is a very practical resource and a very good book for understanding photography. So it is highly recommended. All right, Slide Master, next slide, please. Moon phase review. So in order to go out and take moon photos, let's just quickly review the moon phases. So we know here on Earth, we only see one side of the moon because it's gravitationally locked. So when we have the sunlight source in our slide showing the sunlight coming from one side, and then we're on Earth, we'll start at point A, which is the new moon. So if the moon is between the Earth and the sun, we're not going to see any illuminated side, and therefore we have a new moon. As we move toward full moon through stages B, C, and D, we call those waxing because the moon is getting brighter. I like to say, you know, what happens when you put wax on your car? It gets shiny. So as it moves toward full moon, the moon is getting shinier, so it is waxing. So we move from a waxing crescent to first quarter, and then waxing gibbous. Gibbous means almost full. And then we're at the full moon. And then stages F, G, and H, it's getting paler. Wan is like a pale expression. So as we move through F, G, and H, the moon is getting paler, so it is waning. So we go from waning gibbous to third quarter to waning crescent and back to the new moon. So that is the one complete cycle of the moon. So depending on what moon phase you're trying to shoot, the moon is going to be illuminated either very little or a lot, and that's going to affect your exposure time and your aperture, your shutter speed, and your ISO. So you have to take your moon phase into account in order to take a good moon photo. All right, Slide Master, next slide, please. So looking at equipment. So my equipment, I have a Hardin Deep Space Hunter model DSH-6. This is 6-inch f8 Newtonian telescope. So Newtonian means it has two mirrors. At the very base of the scope is the primary mirror at the very, very bottom. And the end with the orange cap, that is where the eyepiece would go. And at the top of the telescope there's a cover over the top of the telescope. And there's a mirror inside at 45 degrees. When the light hits the primary, it hits the secondary mirror, which sends the light to the eye. And I don't have an eyepiece in there. The orange cap is the cap for where the eyepiece would go. Since it's 6 inches in millimeters, that would be 150 millimeters, times 8 tells me that that's 1,200 millimeter focal length. So I don't think you can get a hard and deep space hunter unless you go onto a website and look for one used. So I bought this from a task member, John Wagner. So if y'all remember John Wagner, I bought this scope from him. Next slide, please. So the next slide shows me with my telescope. I had just recently purchased that. I think this was the first spring season I was using the telescope. This was my hard and deep space hunter at the TASS Dark Sky site in Atoka, Oklahoma. So there I am with my TASS hat and badge, and there's some familiar folks standing behind. And the scope originally came with a finder scope. I did remove it because I solely used the Telrad, that boxy looking thing that's mounted on the tube as the Telrad target finder, which is very helpful for deep sky objects. And it's helpful, you know, to get it centered. The moon is an easy subject to center using your target finder, because then if you go searching, you get it, basically you get the moon centered in the eyepiece, and then you use knobs on the Telrad to center the moon in the bullseye. And then if you go off looking for stars, if it's centered in the bullseye, then it's centered in your eyepiece. The silver thing on the end of the telescope is a full aperture glass solar filter, which is awesome for taking solar photos. And I do have an example of a solar photo later in this presentation. So that is my telescope that I use in combination with my point and shoot camera to get lunar photos. Slide Master, next slide, please. So it should be slide number 7, point and shoot camera. So this is an Amazon picture of the camera, and I have this exact camera. This is my #1 go-to camera for taking pictures using my telescope. It is a Kodak EasyShare C182 digital camera, and it has a very large live view on the back, so it's very helpful when taking lunar photos. It's on Amazon for about $100. I got mine at Micro Center. It was refurbished for about $80. And the telescope that I bought from John with the solar filter, I paid $120. So I basically use a $200 setup to take my lunar photos. Okay, I'm not seeing the digital camera coming up on the slideshow. I am watching the slides. Tom, did you get to advance the slide? This is to KE5ICX from KF5PDS. Okay, what was the last thing you heard me say? Sorry if I dropped out. I didn't realize I dropped out. Please tell me the last thing that you heard me say, and I'll pick up from there. Sorry about that.
You timed it out quite a bit ago, Billy. Oh boy. You were talking about your telescope and who you bought it from, and I'm trying to remember what you said after that. Does anybody else remember in 5BB?
Dark Sky site in Atoka, Oklahoma, in D5FC.
Okay, slide number 6. Sorry about that. I thought that the timer had been suspended during Skynet so that I could keep talking. So sorry about that. That's bozo alert on me. So the picture that's showing right now is me at the Dark Sky site at TASS. Dark Sky site in Atoka, Oklahoma. So the telescope originally came with a finder scope, which I removed because I was not using it. The boxy object that's on the tube is called a Telrad finder, and that is an excellent bullseye finder. You can center the object you're looking for in the eyepiece and then use knobs on the Telrad to center them in the bullseye, and then if you move to a different object, you have it centered in the bullseye, then it's centered in your eyepiece. The moon is an excellent object to center on your eyepiece, so it makes it easy. But you could also center it on a different object, but the moon, if the moon is out, getting your Telrad set using the moon is an excellent way to get that set up. It's a 6-inch Dobsonian telescope, again, f8, which means it has a focal length of 1,200 millimeters. All right, Slide Master, next slide, please. So the Kodak EasyShare C182 digital camera. Okay, thanks for that. Man, that's dropping out quick. Okay, the Kodak EasyShare C182 digital camera. I'll just reset after every slide, so hopefully it won't keep dropping out. The Kodak EasyShare C182 digital camera pictured here. This is a picture from Amazon, but I have this exact camera, same color and everything. This is the camera, the point and shoot that I use with my telescope to get my lunar photos. And I do have some from a DSLR that I'll show here in a little bit, but this is my #1 go-to. I use this with my telescope. The telescope I got from task member John Wagner. I bought my telescope from him for $120, which included the solar filter. He was incredibly generous. And then I bought this camera from Micro Center for about $80, so I use a $200 setup to get my lunar photos. And then I did purchase a DSLR, which I'll show next. But this Kodak EasyShare camera is a great little point and shoot. It's got a very nice view on the back, a live view that makes it easy to see what kind of photos you're getting. Let me reset. All right, Slide Master, next slide, please. So I have a Canon EOS Rebel T3i, but I could not find a good picture of one because it's an older camera. So pictured, I found a nice Canon EOS Rebel T7 camera bundle. And it's on Amazon for about $679. But that price, you get everything that's pictured there in the description. You get the camera body, a couple of lenses, some filters, a stand. You get 2 64-gig memory cards, wide-angle lens, telephoto lens, 3-piece filter kit, accessory kit. So that is a really nice bundle. When I bought my T3i Canon EOS Rebel, it was the camera and 18 to 55 millimeter lens, and I think just the camera body and that one lens cost close to $500, and I saved up for that. So I bought that many years ago, but now the T7, this looks like a very nice bundle as a DSLR camera, which you can get very nice photos of the moon using a DSLR. So let me reset. All right, next slide, please. So point and shoot with a telescope. This is called afocal photography. So with afocal photography, the camera is positioned directly against the eyepiece of the telescope. So as I mentioned before, I use the little Kodak EasyShare blue camera. I put the camera right up to the eyepiece. I either use a 9mm eyepiece or a 25mm eyepiece. And you're just putting the camera right against the eyepiece of the telescope and taking pictures. The picture that's on this slide was taken that way with my point and shoot and my telescope with a 25mm lens. You want to ensure that you have sharp focus, a narrow aperture, fast shutter speed, low ISO. If you just stick to that to start with, narrow aperture, f11 is great to start with. a fast shutter speed. You can play with the shutter speed and try a low ISO. You can even go up as high as 400 if you wanted to experiment with that. But for moon photos, narrow aperture, fast shutter speed, low ISO typically will keep you in the good range for getting a good photo. And then you can look at your photos. Nice thing about digital, of course, is you can look at it. If you don't like it, you can delete it. But I would say wait until you look at it on a computer monitor before you decide to delete the photo. And the nice thing is you can just keep taking photos until you fill up your SD card and then decide to delete photos later. And again, you'll position your camera lens directly to the eyepiece when you're doing afocal photography. Something that's important to note when you're shooting with a telescope is allow your telescope to acclimatize before shooting. So if it is, especially when it's cold, you'll notice your telescope's been inside your warm car or warm house, and you'll see very shimmery images from the thermal currents in the tube. So you'll want the tube temperature to come down to match the ambient temperature so that you get the clearest photos as possible. But also, you can allow your telescope to warm up outside, but normally when you're shooting in cold weather, that's when you see the worst seeing with the thermal currents. So you always want to allow your telescope to acclimatize before you start shooting. And you can experiment with different eyepieces and camera settings. A Barlow can increase magnification, but it may require more precise focus and alignment. I've never shot the moon with Barlow. I have looked through a Barlow lens, and my best advice there is to center your object in the eyepiece before you put Barlow on it, because Barlow does usually double the magnification, and it's harder to find an object when you're so greatly magnified. So find the object when you're at the regular eyepiece magnification, and then once you get it centered in the eyepiece, then you can drop your Barlow lens in and then see the object at a higher magnification. All right, Slide Master, next slide, please. You can do DSLR without a telescope, and DSLR is short for digital single lens reflex, which means that your viewfinder and lens that you're taking the picture with, you're looking through the same lens to take the picture. If you've ever used a twin lens reflex, that has a separate viewfinder, and you may have found, I have a lot of family photos that were taken with a Kodak Instamatic that was a twin lens reflex, and you look at a lot of the photos and people have their heads cut off because you're looking through the viewfinder and not the lens that you were taking the photo with, and so those are in different places on the camera, and so it's harder to line up. But with a digital single lens reflex, the view that you see through the lens is the picture that you're taking, so it makes taking pictures a lot easier. You want to definitely make sure that you use a tripod or a stable surface to take pictures with a DSLR. They are heavier cameras. They are harder to hold steady. You want to use a zoom lens to take a picture with the moon greater than 200 millimeter. I use 300 millimeter. I have a 70 to 300 millimeter lens, and the photo that's on that slide there was taken with a 300 millimeter setting. And again, you want a narrow aperture, fast shutter speed, low ISO. You can try different settings and compositions to find what works best for your camera and moon phase. So this is an image of the full moon that I took with my DSLR, my Canon EOS Rebel T3i, 300 millimeters, and this particular setting was f5.6 at 1/2500th of a second at ISO 400. And if you're wondering how do you get to know those numbers, you can actually shoot a picture, and when you look at it on your computer, you can right-click and look at the properties of the picture, and you can find these details in the file of the photo. But you can also know what your camera is set at, and then you can change those things and experiment with different settings. But if you're not sure, if you're an absolute beginner, something that you can do is shoot in auto mode and then look to see what settings, say, hey, that was a good picture, and look to see what settings the camera itself chose, and then you can experiment from there. Let me reset. All right, Slide Master, next slide, please. So doing DSLR with a telescope is called prime focus photography. Now, unfortunately, I have not been successful with doing prime focus photography. So the picture that I'm showing there is my point and shoot picture. So when you do prime focus photography, this utilizes the telescope's full focal length. So it's like turning your telescope into a gigantic lens. So like with my telescope, it would make my camera have a 1200 millimeter lens. And this is it can be less expensive than buying a 1200 millimeter lens. There's currently a Leica 1600 millimeter apochromatic lens. It's the most expensive lens in the world at $2 million. So, but there are lenses that are tens of thousands of dollars. So if you don't have tens of thousands of dollars to spend on a long focal length lens, you can attach your DSLR camera to a telescope and basically turn it into a long lens. This will utilize the telescope's full focal length. So what you'll want to do is remove the eyepieces from the focuser, attach a T-ring that matches your DSLR's mount to the camera body, connect the T-adapter that fits your telescope to the T-ring, and then you've got your camera body attached to your telescope, and then you can use your camera's live view and zoom. It's best to shoot in RAW format for maximum flexibility in post-processing. If you shoot in JPEG, it's already going to be compressed. You'll still have some capability to manipulate the image and process it, but not near as much as if you shoot in RAW. Just keep in mind that RAW files are very large. And so if you shoot in RAW, you're not going to be able to shoot as many photos, but you will have much more capability of post-processing those images. And the reason I have not been successful is because the camera body is so heavy it pulls my tube down, and I need counterweight on the end to balance the weight of the DSLR camera body. And again, you will want to try different settings and compositions to find what works best for your camera and moon phase. Let me reset. Slide Master, next slide, please. So again, just remember that don't be afraid to experiment. An image doesn't have to be bright to be awesome. So in the next couple of slides, I'll show some darker images. The image on this particular slide for experimenting is a slightly darker, I just used for post-processing, I made it that's the same photo I've been using on my previous slides, just a little bit darker. And the other image that I showed actually won the International Observe the Moon Night for 2011 Best Wide Angle Photo. So I was really pleased and happy with that to be part of that contest and have my photo be a contest winner. I thought that was really awesome. Here's just a slightly different, slightly darker version of that same photo. You can also try bracketing exposures, which means taking multiple shots of the same scene with varying exposures. So you can take one shot at the recommended exposure, take one or more underexposed, and take one or more overexposed shots. And this will allow you to choose either the best one or to combine the images using software to create a higher dynamic range. And I know on the iPhone you can actually shoot HDR, and you may be able to on DSLRs as well. But you can combine photos with software and make the most of the dynamic range so that everything is illuminated and looks and is sharp. So that's something that you can experiment with also, is bracketing exposures. Let me reset. All right, so next up is Spooky Mare Crucium. I took this during a lunar eclipse right before it flipped over to totality and shone red. And it's just one that I included to show that an image does not have to be bright to be awesome. So it can be a darker, more mysterious photo. So here, the very top part of the photo where you see that darker patch, that is Mare Crucium, and I just thought this was a really cool but mysterious looking view of our moon. So it doesn't have to always be bright to be an amazing photo. Next slide, please. So the next slides I'll move a little quicker, so I know I'm running a little bit long. But you can actually put labels on your photos. This is something you can experiment with Photoshop or GIMP, which is what I used. And here is just a picture that I use in my touring the moon. It's a full moon picture. I took this again with my little blue point and shoot camera and my telescope, and then I just added the arrows and the text later in GIMP, which is a free photo manipulation tool. It's an open source Photoshop basically. So here I just did this to educate myself and also use it for different presentations. Next slide, please. You can also do this for craters. So I took the same picture of the full moon and just highlighted different craters on the moon. So, and again, I walk through these in my Touring the Moon talk, but it's a great way to create photos and label things and educate yourself, and also build up your post-processing skills and be able to do more with your photos and use them as educational tools. Let me reset and we can go to the next slide, please. So just a few other objects that are interesting. The Lunar X. This is visible from Earth. You can see it in binoculars or with a small telescope. I actually took this picture with my point and shoot and a 9mm eyepiece in my telescope. And this is created by sunlight falling on the rims of 3 different craters, Lacaille, Blanchinus, and Purbach. It's visible only for a few hours during the first quarter moon, slightly below the lunar terminator. So I happened to catch that. So that was a got lucky shot, but you can catch things and you may not even realize it. And I took this to a show and tell, and somebody said, "Hey, Billye, you got the Lunar X." And I was like, "I did." It was so cool. I was really pleased and surprised. So the Lunar X is one cool feature that you can see on the moon. Next slide, please. The next picture is a lunar eclipse photo that I took with my DSLR. And I just took this from my backyard using my DSLR and tripod. Let me reset. So again, this photo I took with my DSLR during a lunar eclipse with a tripod, and you can see stars behind. This is when the moon was in totality, and you can see stars in the night sky as well as the eclipsed moon. Next slide, please. Next couple of slides have phone pictures that I took with my iPhone. The next slide just shows the crescent moon, and I just captured this with my iPhone. As the iPhone pictures have got, or iPhones themselves, the cameras have gotten better and better. I used to not be able to take pictures through my telescope or good pictures without the telescope. This is crescent moon with my iPhone without a telescope. It was just on a nice night, and I saw the crescent moon, so I took a photo with my phone, and it turned out pretty good. The next slide will show last year with the solar eclipse, I tried taking it with my iPhone with and without the telescope. So the picture on the left that you'll see is putting my iPhone up to the eyepiece, and I was kind of in a hurry to take the picture because I wanted to put the let other people look through my telescope. So the picture on the left, it was kind of a hurried job, so you see a lot of bouncing reflection through the eyepiece. So if you take your time, you can get a better picture. But I used to could never get pictures with my iPhone through my telescope, but now with the later models and better cameras, it's possible. So on the left is the eclipse just starting. On the right, this is just a picture using my iPhone without the telescope during totality. Totality was much more impressive than this photo allows. If you got to see it, you know what I'm talking about. And if you have not been in totality, 99.999% is not totality. You need to get where you can be in the path of totality. So it was a really awesome experience. Next slide, please. So the next slide shows what you can do with solar photos. This is with my telescope, again, with my point-and-shoot camera and the full aperture solar filter. This was in January of 2014 at 11:30 in the morning. I took this from my front yard, and this was, again, with that little blue camera and my 6-inch Dobsonian telescope with a 25-millimeter eyepiece and just barely processing in GIMP. When I process in software, I tend not to do a lot of processing. The better photos you take, the less processing they will need. But you can try. I usually will tweak brightness and contrast only. Those are generally the things that I tend to mess with. With the sun, I may do a little bit of saturation for color. So here you can see this was a pretty active solar day, lots of sunspots. But again, do not look directly at the sun with the naked eye, ever, ever, ever. You do not want to ever look at the sun. And this was through the full aperture solar filter, and I would recommend getting a full aperture rather than little filters that screw onto the end of the eyepiece, because those get really, really hot and they can crack, and you do not want it to all of a sudden crack with your eye on the eyepiece. So if you get a full aperture solar filter, those are the best. And so I took this just using my same lunar setup, but with a solar filter and taking a picture of the sun. Next slide, please. The last photo that I'll share is the Venus transit. This was taken back in 2017 at Farmers Branch Public Library, and they had a telescope already set up with what they referred to as a sun funnel. Basically, it was an actual funnel with projective screen material stretched over the top of the funnel, and you could see the image right there. So this is the sun, and the dark circle is the planet Venus transiting across the sun. The left image was an unprocessed photo. The right image was processed in GIMP. I really upped the saturation. I thought it looked like a navel orange. I thought it looked kind of cool. So the nice thing about the sun funnel is multiple people could stand around and look at the image at one time and take pictures, and that way many more people could see the image at one time rather than lining up and looking one at a time in an eyepiece. So their telescope plus that sun funnel really made for a fun experience. All right, next slide, please. So just to recap the equipment that you can use a DSLR with a long lens by itself or with a telescope, a point-and-shoot camera with a telescope. You can hold it up to the eyepiece, or they make brackets to attach the camera. I never had much luck with that. I prefer to hold it to the eyepiece. You can also use a webcam with a telescope. I didn't go into that in this talk, but that is something that you can do. So you can try that. You can get better pictures if your telescope can track. Now, the pictures that I've shown in my slides did not have any tracking. My telescope does not have any tracking capability. But if you want to take longer exposures or things like that, if you get a telescope that has a motor that can track the moon, and also try your smartphone. Nowadays, smartphones have really excellent cameras, and you may be able to get really good lunar photos with just your iPhone or your smartphone if you have an Android. And something else you could use, I didn't talk about it in this talk, but the C-Star, those can be a little more expensive, but those do lunar, solar, and deep sky. They're smart telescopes, so you can look into that. They're just called C-Star, S-E-E star. And then optional tools, you could try stacking software. Deep Sky Stacker is free. GIMP, which is the GNU image manipulation program, is also free. Or you could use Photoshop. A lot of folks' computers come loaded up with Adobe Suites on them, so if you have Photoshop, you can use that. And just remember, take lots of photos, try different settings, keep practicing, and above all, have fun. This is a fun hobby, and it's really exciting to see the photos that people get, especially if they come to a star party and put their phone up to the telescope. I encourage them to do that, and then they take pictures, and when they see they can get great pictures just from their phone, their face just lights up like, oh my God, I took that. So it's really a fun and rewarding thing to be able to take your own awesome lunar photos. Next slide, please. So some resources. Sky and Telescope's field map of the moon is a helpful resource if you're going to do lunar observing for particular objects. The Moon Observer's Guide by Peter Grigo has good information about telescopes in general and other astronomical information and lots of lunar information. You can also play with Google Moon. That's fun to do. If you can't go out and observe the moon, you can pull up Google Moon and look at that. Cloudy Nights is a great place to buy and sell used equipment. Micro Center is a great place to go to get refurbished equipment. That's good for computers as well as cameras. Micro Center is a really great place to shop for refurbished items. If you're looking for observing opportunities and programs, as we've already mentioned, the Texas Astronomical Society with texasastro.org, as Chaz mentioned earlier. But if you're looking for lunar observing programs, and I know Chaz will talk more about this in his Was Up segment, you can do lunar programs through the Astro League, which is just astroleague.org. So I'll leave it to Chaz to give you more details on that. So our next slide is just questions. Is there anyone out there with any questions for this topic? If so, please come now with your call sign name and where you're transmitting from.
November Victor 5 Foxtrot.
And V5F, Virginia, do you have a question?
Well, I don't really have a question. You covered everything so well. I just wanted to comment and say this was really good. I like that you're talking about something you're excited about and that you know a lot about personally. And I didn't get to hear it at Moon Day, so I really appreciate you talking about it tonight, and I'm already digging around online to see what I can find. So thanks so much. It was really good. NV5F.
Thank you so much, Virginia. Yeah, I love doing this, and I love presenting at Moon Day as well. I'm glad I was able to share it with you and get you excited about it as well. Is there anyone else with any questions or comments on the topic? If so, please come now with your call sign.
Kilo 5, Juliet Delta Whiskey, John and Coppell.
K5 JDW, John and Coppell, I've got you checked in. Do you have a question or comment?
Well, actually, I was just trying to check in, but yeah, I could comment. I guess I was like you were saying. Definitely, timing's everything. The times you look at Saturn are going to be different every few years. You know, definitely the timing there. Trying to think when you take pictures of the moon, like your X picture, they're like Google Earth pictures. They wait till like the early morning and stuff, so you get the contrast. You get those contrasts with the craters stuff. So you know about that. I'm trying to think and also you're talking about aligning your telescope earlier. That's one of my little tricks I've always used. I think we actually talked about it once. Was you take that eyepiece out, and sometimes you can get about if you can see it without the eyepiece, you can actually get sometimes better than a quarter of a degree off of alignment just without the eyepiece. And you know all the technical tricks. All those little technical tricks come with actual experience. And that's all. It was a good talk. I appreciate that. K5 JDW.
Thank you. I got you checked in, and I'll do a check-in round here in just a second. Tom, if you'll go ahead and move to the last thank you slide, I'll just thank everyone. And that is a great tip, John. I have done that myself, taken the eyepiece out and just look for the reflection in the primary, and that is a great tip to share. So thank you for sharing that as well. So I'll just wrap it up by saying thank you very much for your attention and interest in the topic. And if you have further questions, you're welcome to send in an email to the net, and I'll be glad to answer more questions off net. but hopefully this will get you interested in trying taking your own photos. You may not have realized that you can do it. And I talked with a man at the end of Moon Day. We were waiting in line for the astronaut to meet him, and he said, I've got a camera and I've got a telescope, but it never dawned on me to try to put the two together. He said, I can't wait to get home and try to experiment with that. So if this has piqued your interest at all, I'm very excited that it has done so, and I'm happy to present it tonight. So thanks again for listening. And with that, I'll wrap the topic up. This is KF5PDS, your net control for this session of the DARC Skynet. All right, before we move on to Chaz, I'm looking on the website. I don't see any other website check-in, but if there's anyone else online that would like to check in before we move over to What's Up, please come now with your call sign, name, and where you're transmitting from. Not hearing anyone else, but John, I did get you checked in. And so at this time, I'll move over to What's Up. Chaz, KF5JHA, the net is yours from KF5PDS.
Thank you, Billy. Slide Master, slide number 2. Billy and I both did presentations at Moon Day, and that was fun. Now, we call this segment of Skynet What's Up because it's all about what's going on astronomically over the past couple of weeks and what will take place over the next couple of weeks and beyond. Slide Master, slide number 3. Talking about Moon Day, this slide is Moon Day. Moon Day was a week ago, July the 19th, and let's go on to the next slide. Slide Master, slide number 4. Moon Day, Apollo 7 capsule is there in the Frontiers of Flight Museum. Also, the National Space Society. Bill knows all about that. He's the Vice President of National Space Society. They were there. Slide Master, slide number 5. The Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas and the Dallas Amateur Radio Club were all at Moon Day. Wow, that's interesting. That was slide number 5. Slide number 6. 2 of our net control stations were at Moon Day. Virginia is pictured here, as well as Dr. Billye. Yep. Sorry, Bill. You're another net control. You're running out all over the place, and I didn't get your picture. I apologize. Slide Master, slide number 7. Now, just after Moon Day, early morning, Sunday morning, last Sunday, there was an occultation of the star cluster, the Pleiades, also known as M45. Occultation is usually it's when the moon blocks something from our view, like a planet or a star. It could happen with other things. Asteroids could block stars too, but we usually refer to occultations of the different objects by the moon. Well, the Pleiades star cluster was occulted by the moon Sunday morning. I got these pictures then. Billy talked about taking pictures of the moon. If you want to take a good picture of the moon, the sea star I have is an excellent thing to do that with. That's the picture on the left-hand side. The middle picture is what you would see if you had a pair of binoculars, but I had to overexpose the moon a little bit to be able to get the stars, some of the stars. And the right-hand picture in this slide, well, I had to way overexpose the moon and get an internal reflection on the side of the screen to get the Pleiades, the star cluster. So there's such a contrast, such an extreme brightness difference between the moon and the Pleiades. That's why you have to overexpose the moon to be able to get the Pleiades. Slide Master, slide number 8. This is just another picture of the Pleiades and the moon during the occultation. It's a fun thing to do. I had not tried this before, trying to take a picture of the Pleiades and the moon together, but I did a wide range of exposures and bracketing, just like what Billy was saying, bracketing. That's what it works for me. Okay, Slide Master, slide number 9, please. We've talked about the predicted nova of the star T Corona Borealis, which may erupt at any time. It is currently at a brightness of around 10th magnitude. I just looked it up a few minutes ago. That's too faint to be able to see with your 2 eyes. T Corona Borealis was supposed to go nova more than a year ago. Now there's new predictions of November the 10th of this year and June the 25th of next year. Well, we don't know. But when it does go nova, T Corona Borealis could become as bright as the North Star, which is second magnitude. And I can see the North Star with my two eyes, just my two eyes, from my very light polluted location here in Mesquite. Slide Master, slide number 10. This image is of the sun, taken from spaceweather.com from July the 23rd, just a couple of days ago. The large sunspot complexes on the sun sometimes are so large that you can use just your solar eclipse glasses to see them. Now the sun is around its 11-year solar maximum. We're not quite sure when the solar maximum will occur until after it happens. I talked about the solar cycle about 4 months ago on Skynet. Slide Master, slide number 11. The moon was new on July the 24th, just a couple days ago. So the current phase of the moon is a waxing crescent. I didn't get to see it tonight, but I wasn't looking outside at the right time, and there was a lot of clouds, so I might not have been able to see it. Anyway, first quarter moon is on August the 1st. On August the 1st, the moon is also at apogee, which is the point in the moon's orbit that is furthest from the Earth at a distance of 404,161 kilometers. On August the 9th, the moon is full. On August the 14th, the moon is at perigee, which is the point in the moon's orbit that is closest to the Earth at a distance of 369,288 kilometers. Third quarter moon is on August the 16th. Slide Master, slide number 12. On July the 28th, the conjunction of the moon and Mars will happen in the western evening sky. Slide Master, slide number 13. On July the 30th, the moon and the bright star Spica are in conjunction in the southwestern evening sky. Slide Master, slide number 14. On August the 3rd, you can observe the conjunction of the moon and Antares in the southern evening sky. Now, you could take a picture of all these conjunctions with the moon and these bright objects in the sky with your camera on a tripod. You could try that. Slide Master, slide number 15. The Pleiades, the Perseid meteor shower. On the night of August 11th and 12th is the peak of the Perseid meteor shower, with up to about 100 meteors per hour. Most of the time you'll see most meteors. The most meteors you can see is around the hour just before dawn. Now, to get a detailed information about how to observe meteors and meteor showers, you can visit the International Meteor Organization at www.imo.net or the American Meteor Society at amsmeteors.org. Slide Master, slide number 16. On the early morning of August the 12th, there's going to be conjunction of the moon, Saturn, and Neptune. You'd need a telescope to be able to see Neptune. And also, on that same morning, slide Master, slide number 17, on August the 12th, in the opposite side of the sky, in the northeastern part of the sky, there's a close conjunction of Jupiter and Venus. They're about a degree apart, so this will be interesting. Try to take a picture again with your cameras. That would be an interesting thing to get. Slide Master, slide number 18. And beginning on the morning of August the 16th, there's a daytime occultation of the Pleiades. You'll need to use a moderate-sized telescope to observe this because it's daytime and you won't be able to see those stars unless you have a telescope. And this is KF5, JHA, and this is Skynet. Slide Master, slide number 19. Now, do any of you out there in Radio Land have a question or maybe need to fill in the information? Maybe you just have a general astronomy question. Come now with your call sign if you need a fill or have a question.
Kilo 5, Julia, Delta Whiskey.
John, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Good talk there. I do have a quick comment about whenever you have a sunspot that's at least, 3 or 4 Earth diameters. One of my favorite things to do is take a little makeup mirror, since I don't use it for makeup anymore. You put a little piece of cardboard on it with a 1/4 inch hole punched on it, and you can actually project that sunspot, the sun you projected. It acts like a point source. You can up under the porch or someplace that's, cut off from the light a little bit, and on a piece of paper you can actually see the sunspots. It's really fun. K5JDW.
During a total eclipse of the sun, partial eclipse of the sun too. If you look underneath a tree, all the shafts of light look like little crescent suns. That's a pretty good trick too. Thank you, John. Skymaster slide number 20. So as the moon waned the last week, so do these words for this segment of Skynet. Stay safe, keep well, pray for our world. So you want only one word, humans live right now. And until next time, well, we're not going to do Constellation normal next week. We're going to postpone that until next week. So keep looking up so you know what's up. And this is KF5JHA, and this is Skynet. Back to our net control.
Great. Thank you, Chaz. Then I ran particularly long with my topic. I was just so excited to share my presentation, so I apologize to the rest of the net. You will have been scrubbed to a later mission. Anyway, Chaz, thank you for the sea star pictures. I'm so glad you had images using the sea star. I have a picture from the October 2023 partial eclipse. Like you were talking about the shadows through the trees, I have a photo that has got a bunch of crescents shining on the fence in my backyard. It is a really cool effect to see. All right, so at this time, I'm going to have to close up the net. So we'll go through 73 round. I'll take a final round of check-ins or comments. So let me see if there's anyone. I don't see anyone on the club website check-in. So if you would like to get in for this evening's net, please come now with your call sign name, where you're transmitting from. This is final call for check-ins.
Kilo 5, Juliet, Delta Whiskey, recheck.
K5JDW, did you have a final question or comment for the net?
Yeah, thanks. Quickly, if I said eclipse, my bad. I'm going brain dead, I guess. I was talking about sunspots only, taking the mirror and projecting the sun up under something. So I was looking at sunspots. So if I said eclipse, my bad. K5JDW.
No worries, John, no worries. And that is a cool thing to be able to see sunspots. That is really a neat trick. And also on Echolink, I pick up KI5JCM Thomas. I'm sorry I won't have time to get to you, but I do acknowledge you for this evening's net. So thank you again for checking in. Again, this net starts at 9 and runs till 10:30. So thank you to all who have checked in. So let me go ahead and close the net. So tonight we had 22 hands participating on the air, so thank you to all who checked in this evening. We hope you'll join us here next week and every Saturday night at 9 p.m. to discuss astronomy, space, and space exploration. On this net, the sky is never the limit. We're always looking for net control stations for this and all the other DARC nets. If you'd like to try your hand at this, contact any of the net controls by sending an email to nets@w5fc.org. You can follow topics and discussion about this net and astronomy in general on Facebook and X, as well as our audio-video streams, video archives, and other useful internet resources by going to w5fc.org at the conclusion of this net. So until next Saturday night, this is KF5PDS, Billye, and I'll be closing the net at 22:31 local time and returning the repeater to normal amateur use. 73, everybody, and enjoy the evening discovering the universe. And stick around in about 5 minutes. Afterglow movie will start up, so stick around for that. Go get some popcorn and come back for Afterglow movie net. 73, everybody.
KI5JCM. Now, guys, before you leave, the word is, only the cool kids get to stay around until the Afterglow. So, you know, you're cool. You're a ham radio operator, so stick around. KI5JCM.
All right, well, it is now 5 minutes since the last net, and time for the Afterglow movie net, which we promised you. And tonight's movie is a real special film. I know a little inside stuff on this one that I'm going to tell you about. Tonight's movie is called Moontrap. Yeah, it's called Moontrap. It's a 1989. Actually, I think it came out in 1988. Science fiction film produced by a company called Magic Films. A couple of people wrote and directed for a local trade area. It was released on April 28th at World Fest in Houston. There was a comic book adaptation featuring the film's production notes, was released in the same year. Features Walter Koenig and Bruce Campbell. Yeah, that's Bruce Campbell as modern-day astronauts, with Lee Lombardi as an ancient astronaut from a forgotten human civilization. They face an alien invasion by a race of predatory cyborgs. So, let me tell you a little bit about production. This is, I think, kind of interesting. This is Robert Dyke, who headed Detroit-based film studio Magic Lantern Studios, specialized in commercials and special effects, but had always had an interest in science fiction. In 1986, Dyke teamed up with his friend Tex Ragsdale, another science fiction fan, and an ad exec at Detroit Smith Winchester Agency to come up with a script for Moontrap. They approached B.K. Taylor at a local comic book convention and recruited him as production designer on the film, with Taylor crafting the look of both the monsters and the alien civilization in a way that he hoped to be reminiscent of the 1950s George Pal produced sci-fi film. Moontrap was released to negative reviews from critics, no surprise there. The movie holds a 29% rating on a Crew review aggregator at Rotten Tomatoes, 5 out of 10 at the Internet Movie Database. DVD Talk had a higher opinion of the movie, stating that it was a low-budget picture. It often exceeds expectations. A Variety stated, Moontrap is a very entertaining, though highly derivative sci-fi adventure. This one's a goodie. Moontrap is exciting and suspenseful. That came from Variety. Obviously, they were on drugs. They did do a sequel called The Moontrap 2, The Pyramids of Mars. It was a slightly better but less bad film than this one. Again, the same people got involved with it. I won't go into details on that because that's not the subject of our movie tonight. So, what's the personal story? Well, let me tell you this. Moontrap was filmed in I think it was over in Irving, Texas, actually an area where I work. It employed, if you look at the end of the credits, the Monroe Science Fiction Club. Yes. And I knew a few of those people who either appeared in, well, they didn't appear in the movie, but they worked on the movie. But most importantly, somebody had to take Walter Koenig on weekends when the filming was not done. I guess they did Monday through Friday or whatever. Maybe more than that. I think they didn't have any money for a hotel for him to stay at. So various people from the science fiction club would take him in for some period of time. And then eventually it was getting down to who's stuck, not with who gets, but who's stuck with Walter Koenig for a week or two or three at a time, living in your home and using your bathroom and toothbrush and all that great stuff. So this is a very low-budget picture. How Bruce Campbell got involved, I have no idea, but maybe somebody here can explain that. But at any rate, that's my story, and they were so happy to see him fly back to California when this thing was all over. All right, with that, let's talk about what we'll be doing. Hopefully you saw the film. If you didn't, it doesn't matter. You'll figure out the plot when we describe it, and so you're allowed to check in even if you didn't see the film. We'll go through the script or story first, followed by characterization and acting, followed by special effects. I think there's plenty to be said about this film. So I'll go ahead and take check-ins. First, please come with your call sign, your name, and did you see tonight's film, Moontrap, from 1988-89? Let's start now.
November 5, Bravo, Bravo, Bill and Irving. Yes, I saw this movie, and I took notes.
This is November Tango 5, Tango Mike, Tony in Dallas. I did see the movie, with company even. I forgot to take notes. Kilo 5, Juliet Delta Whiskey, John Capel. You've named all the things I can check off my list, I think I saw this in the past, but I'm just going to be in the background. Don't call me. Okay, just for checking only. K5JDW.
This is WV5OZL, Brenda in Dallas. I saw this movie, but I didn't want to take notes.
November, Victor 5, Foxtrot, Virginia. I did see this movie.
Okay, let me go ahead and get these folks checked in. I've got Bill on 5DB in Irving. Yes, he saw the film. And T5TM, Tony in Dallas. Yes, he saw the film. K5GDW, John in Capel. Yes, he saw the film, but he doesn't want to talk about it. He doesn't even want to remember it. But, okay. WV5OZL, Brenda in Dallas. Yes, she saw the film. NV5S, Virginia. Yes, she saw the film. Additional check-ins, please come now.
KI5JCM, Thomas. If it's the one where Walter Koenig gets married to the girl they found in cryostasis, yes, I have seen this film. If you can please confirm.
Having seen the film. Anyone else?
Tom, we just got the very end of your last transmission, NV5S.
Okay, well, I think we got everybody for this round. I will certainly ask for additional check-ins as we go, so we'll go down the list as you check in, starting with Bill, N5DV. He's got notes and everything. So, Bill, tell us, what did you think about the plot for Moontrap from 1989 something?
Okie dokie, Tom. This is N5BB. My main description of the plot is corny. That's right, corny. It's got the people that wrote this movie, that wrote the screenplay, tried to be funny, and it didn't work very well. They have all kinds of little jabs going on between Jason Grant, that's Walter Koenig, and Ray Tanner, that's Bruce Campbell. The first of which is the really stupid description of them that they used, I guess, as pilots Walter Koenig, Colonel Jason Grant, being Einstein was his nickname, and Bruce Campbell's nickname was Penetrator. Ha, ha, ha. I don't know. I think that set the tone for the movie right there, which is one reason I don't really like it very much, is because they thought they were being funny, but it's not a really very comic movie. We'll talk about the crummy special effects later. You can tell about when in history this movie was made, and because at one point in the movie, somebody says, "How's our time? You know, how's our schedule going?" And the other person says, "Make like Jumping Jack Flash." So if you were around in the 80s, 70s, and 80s, well, yeah, Jumping Jack Flash. But that kind of sets this movie at a point in time, doesn't make it very universal at all. They had this 14,000-year-old corpse. And as far as I could tell, there was absolutely nothing describing why humans, and they looked like humans, they're humanoids, they look like humans completely, why they would be living on the moon 14,000 years ago. Nope, no description, no discussion, nada. Not important to the people that wrote this movie. They're going to throw these things in there and just hope you ignore them. There's other things about the plot that were horrible. They get this stuff that appears to be alien, maybe, who knows, back to the NASA. And what do? They walk in there. Do they have contamination control? No. Do they have suits on, booties? No. Do they have masks on? No. Do they have cameras and other things monitoring what's going on there to make sure nothing goes out of control? No. They were amateurish. This was filmed right as the Soviet Union was just getting ready to fall through. So at one point they mentioned, the Soviets might be on the moon or going to the moon, and later they mentioned Russians. So it's just probably one of the last mentions of Soviets in movies. What else? Let's see. Other bad thing about the plot, Jason, Walter Koenig, was up above the cyborg, up in the air handling duct, and after he shot the thing and destroyed it, the next scene you see him very easily arriving on the floor, like he dropped down. But it was a very high ceiling. If he dropped down from that high ceiling, he would be really crunching when he hit the floor. No. So continuity there wasn't very good. They didn't think about making it appear realistic. And then there's a lot of other scientific problems. Mira had a spacesuit. They seem to be able to hear her, communicate with her over the radio. How did that happen? How in the world would they communicate with each other? And also they had the Apollo capsule circling the moon, yet they communicated with it anytime they wanted to. Well, the Apollo capsule wasn't hovering up there, it was orbiting the moon. So they wouldn't be able to communicate with it continuously, so that was really goofy. And when they were in this, the little tiny thing that blew up into a structure that Colonel Jason Grant and Mira could get into up there on the moon, Where'd the air come from? That little thing was tiny. There couldn't be enough air in that. Air and climate control. And it didn't look like there was an airlock. They kind of walked through drapes or something. And then, again, another comment about the plot, gratuitous nudity for no reason at all. Also, the lunar excursion module had a detonator on it. There was no detonator on it. Would they have added that? I kind of doubt it, but that was pretty weird. Oh, well, N5BB. That's all I got for now.
Oh, Bill, you're so picky. Of course there were humans on the moon 17,000 years ago. They said it in the film. Okay. Next is Tony. I'm sure Tony has a lot of positive things to say about this film. So, over to NT5TM. Tony, your thoughts on the plot for Moontrap from 1989.
I think even Bugs Bunny would have made fun of this movie. I agree with everything Bill said, but I'd like to add amplification. Of course, I would never have trusted my life to crappy lunar module batteries that were 20 years old at that point, and the spacesuits that were old and hadn't been checked out. Heck, Mira's spacesuit was, 14,000 years old. Pretty sure all the plastics would have depolymerized as the thing was even a little bit above absolute zero. Which brings me another point. How did they date that stuff? Things like carbon dating depend on comparing carbon isotope ratios that have to be carefully calculated to knowledge about Earth's past climate and past solar flux impinging on the Earth, or they're meaningless. If she came from some other planet, the starting point would have been different, to put it simply. And so these dates would be meaningless. They have just no basis. There's something they didn't tell us. They have no basis for assuming they can carbon date that stuff unless they're sure it came from Earth. And that brings me to another complaint about the plot. This movie took the philosophy of tell it in the cut to a ridiculous, I wonder where the police are going, to a ridiculous extreme. We see some stock footage of a Saturn V launch, then we see some soft focus footage of some people driving around in a lunar rover. They just kept skipping and fast forwarding, I guess to save money. So for all we know, there was some good reason that they knew that these strange alien things were from Earth in the distant past, and they just couldn't explain that because they were too busy cutting out 10-minute segments of the movie. And then there are the silly and improbable points of the plot, like the alien giant spaceship just needed a crappy computer and flimsy lunar module from the 60s to complete its structure? I'm not an actor. I don't know how to sound incredulous enough. But imagine the most incredulous sounding character you've ever seen in a movie, and that's what I would like to say about that. So the plot was alternated between completely implausible and ridiculously predictable. It was corny at times. Those moments could be fun. Those moments could even bring a smile to my face and some laughter. If this had been an expensive student project, I would have given it a barely passing grade. It was kind of fun in spots. It was just so stupid and annoying and predictable and full of big jumps. And I can't wait to trash the characters in movie music and special effects. NT5TM.
All right. right, and that was Tony. So we have 2 thumbs up for the film now. Bill and Tony both thought it was a fine film. Next up is Brenda, WB5OZL. Brenda, what say you about the plot for our fine film, Moontrap from 1989?
This is WB5OZL. Well, I looked around the internet to see if I could figure out why Bruce Campbell made this movie. He made a lot of questionable movies back in the day, but, you know, I don't know why. He made some really good ones, too, and some that were, you know, they were questionable, but they were campy enough and funny enough that we enjoyed them. I met him once at a con. He's delightful. He's funny. He's friendly. He likes the fans, and you know, he's a good actor. But you know, he pretty much plays himself in every role, mostly. But you know, you talked about Walter Koenig. I don't know. There was no budget for this. They couldn't have gotten much money, but maybe both of them needed work. And why they hired Walter, bad bit of casting is, why would they cast a man that no woman would ever want to kiss? He just has no appeal whatsoever, and not in real life either. He's, you know, he has all the appeal of stepping in something wet. And and he's gotten worse as he's gotten older. I have never talked to anybody who met him that thought he was fun or interesting or friendly. He just seems to hate the fans. He's just a, you know, a real wet blanket. His acting is, well, you know, he was pretty good as Bester in Babylon 5. I think he was just kind of typecast there as a really slimy guy. But, you know, he had this fakey Russian accent in Star Trek, and this one I just don't think he has a good range as an actor. That's just my personal opinion. But, you know, he was a big name from Star Trek, so they cast him in it. Now, the plot was stupid, as are so many science fiction movies, and we watch them anyway. We often forgive the awful plot if it's kind of fun or holds our interest or something like that, but this one, honestly, it just didn't have much going for it at all. You know, it wasn't believable, it wasn't fun, it wasn't interesting. So, the critics hated it. And most of us do too. You know, I guess I don't mind that I watched it. Had nothing else to do. And it had all kinds of spacey stuff. That was kind of fun. But so far as being a coherent movie, nah, it missed the mark. All right, back to net, WB5OZL.
All right, well, we got another thumbs up on that one, so far so good. Next up is Virginia, ND5F. You're going to make it unanimous, another thumbs up for our fine film this evening from KE5ICX.
Sure. So this movie is like the worst of Top Gun meets the worst of Space Camp meets the worst of Independence Day meets the worst of Star Trek meets worst of another space movie. Really cheesy special effects. Tom, this is one of the ones where we could have stood to have you read the fabulous Wikipedia plot, the Wikipedia version of the plot synopsis, because it is, like Tony said, there's a lot of jumps that assume you know what's going on or don't care, and that's probably my best comparison I can make to 2001, where 2001 starts with a 4 million year jump, and then it goes to an 18-month jump, and then it goes to I guess, a few months between Dave disconnecting Hal and then getting sucked into that Stargate thingy. But this is just... So the best I can tell what happened was the guys were in the space shuttle for God knows how long. They're acting like they've been up there forever, and that starts with cranky, cynical, Walter Koenig as the cranky, cynical astronaut, and so they're basically projecting forward a few years. Oh, this space shuttle program is going to be this, this truck to outer space, which they were kind of ripping on that, and then they find this thing in Earth orbit, and it's got this ancient dead guy that they find, and this weird, football thing that's got a tiny robot in it, and I guess the tiny robot is programmed to, take over whatever it finds. I don't know. Anyway, they bring it back like dummies and just leave it, and it turns into this ugly, funky, kind of comic-looking, supposed to be scary robot thing. And they somehow figure out a way to defeat that. But then somehow they figure out that there's some kind of a base that matches the signature of this thing, or they somehow figure out they need to go to the moon. That there's more of this on the moon. They've got to go to the moon, and they find somehow they have a spare. Apollo everything. They got a spare Saturn V. They got a spare service module. They've got a spare command module. They've got a spare lunar module. I guess they're all fine even after 20 years. But the thing of the detonator being on the lunar module didn't bother me, because that was their whole purpose, was to go back to the moon and be ready to defeat the thing, or destroy it, or maybe sacrifice themselves by blowing it up because they retrofitted out their lunar module with a bomb. So that didn't really bother me, and the stupidest thing is that they had 20-year-old spare Apollo stuff laying around that happened to still work. And, I don't doubt that if they rebuilt it all in the 80s, from scratch, it would still work. And, yeah, the computer on I got to stand up for the AGC on the Apollo. That was a pretty great computer. But, yeah, it's definitely behind where they were in the 80s, but still a pretty awesome computer. Anyway, the thing that got me was the whole thing Bill was talking about, or was it Tony, that somehow it's like they were sitting on the moon waiting for them to bring another lunar module, because that was the thing they decided was going to help them take over the Earth. That was the missing part. That was way dumber than there being a bomb on it. And anyway, I know where they ripped off the plot from Independence Day from. It was from this movie. Anyway, yeah, it was just, there were so many. I could generally figure out what was going on, but the whole, where did these humans on the moon come from? Did they come from the Earth? And yeah, there's no hint to what's going on, and whether they're from another planet or whether they are from the moon, and the people from the moon somehow came to the Earth, and that's where humans came from, is from the moon, or how she stayed in cryostasis all that time, and, you know, yeah, this was just dumb. The whole thing was dumb. You know, it was so 80s in places, and then other places it was just, it defied dumbness, but then it was trying to be a horror movie. You know, first you had these cheesy robots that were supposed to be scary, and I loved the blood effects, like whenever they were injuring somebody, there would just be someone off camera, like, throwing, you could tell it was just being slung in from the side or poured onto somebody or whatever. That owned me. That was so funny. But the part that was so ridiculous was when they were in the ship and the robots were going to chop them up and make, I guess, spare parts out of them to use for cybernetics or something. And then it almost turned into an exploitation film because you got this big scary robot covered with blades, and it's like practically about to, you know, strip this lady down, and, you know, and it has all kinds of just skin crawly connotations to what that machine, where it was going to be. It was just horrible. It was just, you know, it was just trying to be too many different things, I guess. I don't know if I'd rather watch this again or sit through, what was that movie, that moon horror movie, Apollo 18. I don't know which one of these, if I were forced to choose, I'm not sure which one I would sit through again. But yeah, it was just dumb. So I'll leave someone else some stuff to say. Back to Ned in V5F.
Well, I don't think I've heard the word dumb used so many times in one discussion of a movie ever. You hold the record, Virginia, of the most times the word dumb was used in a description of a movie on Skynet. Let's see. So another thumbs up. Next up is Thomas, KI5JCM. Thomas remembers seeing the film. He didn't watch it with us this week, but he does remember the film. Thomas, if you're still out there, does this bring back pleasant memories of this film from 1988? Please go ahead from KD5ICX.
Yes, well, I do remember it. I'm remembering more of it, but I have answers to many questions that were asked. First off, I saw this movie in the 90s when I rented it from the video store. So given it cost me $2.50 and I got to watch it eating a lot of popcorn, I enjoyed it for what it was, but then again, I love B-movies just to point and laugh at. The part I remember most was when Bruce Campbell so pompously says to Walter Koenig, "Ugh, guns on the moon." And Walter Koenig replies, "Well, I don't think we're the first." So, for what it is, it can be entertaining. If you're going in looking for Star Wars or deep writing or witty banter, no. Something stupid to kill 90 minutes, it's all right. Plus, why did they add Bruce Campbell? Because you can take the crappiest movie in the world, and if you put Bruce Campbell in it, it will automatically make it fun. Secondly, the reason they used Walter Koenig was he was the only person with a connection to Star Trek they could get, and at that point in his career, he was desperate enough to take the role. So, you know, I remember on the box in the video store, it even mentioned Star Trek's Walter Koenig. So, answer that question. Overall, this is a bad film. But I think it was meant to be something. I believe this was direct-to-video. It meant to be something kind of dumb you rented from the video store on a Friday or Saturday night when you rented a few other videos. And, you know, look on the bright side, too. With a script this predictable, clunky, and goofy. Goofy is the word I'll use. For that, it's not... Well, the big benefit of this film also is, by starting with a movie this bad, anything you watch after it, going to seem mighty good. Much better by comparison. Those would be my thoughts. KI5JCM, back to net control.
All right, thank you, Thomas. And actually, believe it or not, you're probably the most faithful from the reviews. Generally speaking, a lot of people felt the same thing. And yes, we all use the word dumb in our comments tonight. But so did the people who actually gave it passing grades. They said it was just kind of a cotton candy or caramel corn film to enjoy, maybe a guilty pleasure, something like that. And I think it is for most people. I think maybe us here were a little bit more critical, although we've watched some pretty terrible films, even worse than this one, and managed to survive and take on another one after that. So we have resilience here, to say the least. But more casual audiences take it for what it is, just sort of a basically bad science fiction, easy thing to enjoy for what it is, I suppose. And it kind of is. I wouldn't disagree with that. All right, before I give my comments on the film and the specifics, I'll go ahead and ask if there are any additional check-ins. Please come now. Will you call sign your name and did you see tonight's movie, Moontrap, with Walter Koenig from 1988?
Yeah, this is KB9SOK in Fort Worth. Yes, I did see this film.
This is November 5 Sierra Quebec Alpha. Ron Dallas did not see the film, and this is sort of just a drive-by check-in.
All right, usual suspects have checked in. I got KB9SOK, Sean, usually over in Fort Worth. And I got N5SQA, Ron in Dallas. He did not see the film, but he always checks in to let us know. He's out tooling around the Dallas area. Okay, Sean, you get to make your comments about plot. What do you think? KB9SOK from KE5ICX.
Yeah, this is KB9SOK. I don't really have a whole lot to add. This is, obviously, clearly this is just a B movie. It'd be maybe one of those things that would be interesting had this came out, drive-in still existing then as a secondary movie. I remember seeing many of these movies like this on Friday nights with Joel Godfrey up all night. I think it was on TNT or USA or one of those. Usually followed up by Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. So it's just one of those very, very cheesy sci-fi films. And there actually is a market for that. There are a lot of people who do enjoy watching those. They typically, the plots aren't great. And this one wasn't great, obviously. Everybody's already pointed out all the plot holes. This one was pretty rough. When we initially saw this, I was excited to see Bruce Campbell's in it. And then was very disappointed after watching the movie. Because generally, I do like stuff he's in. And I thought that was a good sign for this one, but unfortunately it wasn't. So not a whole lot to add. Everybody's already pointed out the plot holes. I will say they missed an opportunity for a fun inside joke. Had the first shuttle that they went up in, had they actually been the Enterprise, just, obviously not back to Star Trek, that would have been funny. But anyway, that's all I got. Back to net, KB9SOK.
All right, thank you, Sean. I don't have a lot to add to all of this. I think when I did the synopsis thing, I said it was they filmed it in Irving, Texas. No, obviously not. It was in Detroit, and if I remember correctly, it was filmed in Livonia. And ironically, Irving and Livonia to me are kind of a lot of the same city. If you were to go visit Detroit and you know, or Livonia, which is a suburb of Detroit, you would say, oh, this is a lot like Irving, Texas. Yeah, they are. Very similar. Okay, let's see. What did I want to say about this thing? Now I lost my train of thought. All of the technical stuff, I agree with everybody, although this whole thing of launching a 32-story rocket on a modified launch pad that has been all changed up for shuttle would have been crazy. That would have been difficult to do. Millions and millions of parts that have aged over 20 years. Sure, all that stuff's going to work first time without any issues, right? And everybody mentioned the stairs. Yeah, sure. Everything was hand-built. We had a whole thing on the Apollo program last week. Everything's hand-built. Yes, you had an assembly line of sorts, but nothing's completely done. There's always pieces of the rocket until you get it right to the pad. There's generally stuff that still has to be installed just before flight time, or at least a month or two ahead of time. So, no, when the program was canceled, the program was canceled. All work was stopped at some point. They said Apollo 17 was the last mission. They had hardware, and they were able to take and bring stuff together for Skylab, but they finished what they needed to for the Skylab mission, not leftover parts that you would have ended up with, and that's exactly what they had later on. So, and they used hardware that was going to be used for the final 3 Apollo missions. Well, that was used up on Skylab. Sorry, gang, it doesn't fly. Literally. Let's see. Yeah, I love the igloo. Wasn't that great, the igloo thing, that you could go and it's in your backpack or on your trunk of your too small lunar module, lunar rover, I should say. And I don't know, what the heck was that thing? Who built those things? I don't understand. The lunar module just looks weird. There's things wrong with it, and I'm not sure exactly what, but it's kind of out of proportion somehow. And the only thing that looked good was the command service module, which I think was just a model kit from Revell or something. So it was from a model kit that somebody put together, and did a pretty good job with that. But everything else was like little toys, and badly done toys along the way, too. So all of that, I don't understand what the aliens wanted, and what the invasion was supposed to prove, and why they ended up on the moon and not on Earth in the first place. And if you're going to do interstellar travel, if you're that, the difference between the moon and Earth is just minuscule. But as we all know, in science fiction movies, interstellar travelers who should be thousands of years more advanced than us are dumber than a box of rocks. Or at least when they enter our atmosphere, they end up being really stupid. Every one of them. And we beat them every... Characterization. This should be good. We'll start with Bill, N5BV. Bill, characterization. You're up.
This is N5BV. Okay. Well, I already mentioned that Walter Koenig was Einstein, and Bruce Campbell was Penetrator. So that started with the stupid way they self-characterized each other, and etc. They were both, like I say, corny. And it was very annoying the way they interacted with each other. Very unprofessional. Neither of them could come anywhere near being an astronaut. I tell you, that's the weirdest thing in the world. No way they would have been anywhere near the astronaut corps. to characterization. There was big hair in this movie. It was still the age where there was some big hair that hadn't totally gone away. So you saw a little bit of the big hair syndrome. Mira, of course, we don't know exactly where she came from, how she was able to stay in some kind of suspended animation, and why she woke up when she did, what powered the suspended animation. You know, there's so many things that were not explained. But anyway, the actress that played her was in a number of other things, including a lot of TV programs and a couple of movies. They were all B or B minus movies, I believe. And she was obviously picked because of her figure. She looked really nice in a tight leotard thing up there, attached to with wrist bands to this surface. Why in the world were they up there like that? Who knows? I guess because the bad machine a robot could come over and get to them easier. I don't know. But that was just, again, more gratuitous stuff. And of course, Jason, Walter Koenig, had this miraculously ability to get out of the wristband. How did he do that? I don't know. I guess the aliens weren't very smart. They didn't put a tight wristband on him. They could have used Velcro. Probably would have worked better than what they picked with those metal bands that were too big. He got up and pretty easy. But anyway, that's more characterization of Walter Koenig. He's a magician. He can escape from being bound up. Let's see. I'm looking through my other notes here. Did I say gratuitous nudity? Yes, I did. I'll repeat it again. It was in there twice for no reason other than gratuitous nudity. This movie was designed to be looked at by boys between the ages of probably 16 and 21. Okay, that was a target of this movie, I believe. Mira, the lady from the moon, she could only say a few little words, and she didn't try to speak her language, whatever it was. So again, there was no explanation of this. By the way, her hair was great after being that long in that thing. Didn't she look great? Her skin tone was great. If she had makeup on, it was still there after being in that capsule for 14,000 years. And of course, we have to characterize the cyborgs, who I believe were the Koalium, Koalium. I got this from Wikipedia. And I didn't understand them. I didn't understand what they were trying to do, why they were trying to do it, and exactly how they were trying to do it. But they seemed to be some kind of robotic people that could take other things and build them into their cyborg robots, I guess. But I guess they were evil. But we don't know why. What was their goal? I mean, did they want to make Earth a bunch of cyborgs? Why? Was it like the Borg? They didn't tell us. They didn't even guess. And the actors didn't guess. So there's so much left out of this movie, which is probably good. If they added any more, it would have just been more bad stuff. That's all I got for characterization. And, and acting. Bad. Like I say, it was corny in 5BB.
Okay, thank you, Bill. I know what to say. Yeah, it's all bad. Tony, NT5TM, you're waiting to tear into characterization, and now's your chance. Please go ahead.
Well, actually, I'm going to lead off with something they may have gotten right, and I wish that they'd gone a little further with a couple of throwaway lines. Something that I learned from one of my favorite books, which is one of your favorite books too, Homesteading Space, is that an Apollo space capsule is not a very sanitary space. There is no separate toilet. There is no shower. And so after Apollo 7, the recovery divers learned to warn one another that when you open that hatch, the astronauts are going to absolutely reek. They've been floating around with vomit and excrement and food scraps for a week or more at this point. And they have just, access to a few wet wipes, but that's about it. And then they were shocked after Skylab when the astronauts got out of the capsule, bathed, clean-shaven, and wearing clean clothes, and they didn't smell at all because, of course, Skylab was a space station, and the astronauts had adequate facilities for personal care. So they actually did make a good effort with the Apollo astronauts to have them look really scruffy when they got to the moon. That was the one good touch I liked about the characters. I appreciated that. I would have especially liked it if Mira had to, hold her nose at these smelly Apollo astronauts. I guess there was only one at that point when they got into that igloo shelter, because I'm sure he would have reeked, and she probably didn't have. She had advanced technology. And whenever possible, when I trash a movie, I like to give an alternative suggestion. A wonderful work about ancient astronauts, which is also really special because a number of real astronauts and celebrities like Scott Carpenter and Wally Schirra and Stephen Hawking gave permission for themselves to appear in this book, is called Ancient Shores by Jack McDivitt. It was, I think, his second book. The first one was only published later. It's kind of obscure, but Ancient Shores by Jack McDivitt. It is corny, just like this movie. It is melodramatic, just like this movie tries to be, but isn't. But it's fun. And hey, you can put it down and go make some popcorn. Whatever you like. So that's my side endorsement, Ancient Shores by Jack McDivitt. Yeah, I was truly, if you remember the movie Splash, welcome to Liberty Island. The Statue of Liberty has stood as a beacon of hope for over a century to naked women everywhere. Great boxy balls! I was so shocked to see nudity on YouTube, I didn't even get a chance to enjoy it. I was just so surprised that it was there. The characters were boring, forgettable, shallow, and simplistic. The only nice thing I can say is they at least made the Apollo astronauts look really scruffy. Everyone go read either Homesteading Space or Ancient Shores. NT5TM.
All right, well, thank you, Tony. What can I say to that? Nothing at all. Next is Brenda, WD5OZL. Brenda has an insider on Walter Koenig and Bruce Campbell. She knows them both extremely well. So what do you think about their acting in this fine film and the characterizations that they created from KE5ICX?
WV5OZL, yeah, my good buddies. Spent about 30 seconds with Bruce Campbell, but I saw him speak at a convention, and I see how he interacts with the fans, and there's a reason why everybody loves him, because he's friendly, and he's fun, and he's funny, and makes you feel good. And but spent more time with Walter. He, many years ago, my apologies. Anyway, he wrote a book, or probably somebody wrote it for him, and he was doing a book signing at a bookstore here in the Dallas area. And my sci-fi club, we all dressed up and we went, and you know, we're hosts there. We helped with I don't know, we were just there, but we spent a couple of hours with him, and we couldn't wait to get rid of him, get away from him. He just wasn't any fun at all, especially those of us that were there volunteering to make his book signing a success. So anyway, nobody was a really good actor in this. None of it made any sense. You know, a lot of movies do this thing. They put an actor in a spacesuit and they try to make him into an astronaut. There's a book and a movie called The Right Stuff. You know, they're different from ordinary average people. They're generally smarter and got a lot more on the ball than most actors do. And a lot of times you see that. Their personalities just aren't right, and you just don't really believe them as being astronauts. And so many sci-fi movies do that. Oh, I guess that's all I've got. Back to net, W5OZL.
Oh, why do I get a feeling that we're all headed for the ditch after this? Because we're running out of material, folks. Next up is Virginia, ND5F. Virginia, your thoughts on characterization and the acting in our film Moontrap from 1988.
Well, I've got plenty of material. So, I also met Walter Koenig once. It was a science fiction convention in, I want to say, it was 1997. Anyway, it was a local convention in Mississippi that I've been to a bunch of times, and he happened to be there for something. He was a guest there, and he wasn't doing anything, and I walked up and was like, oh, you know, you're just sitting at this table, like maybe there's going to be a panel in a little while, and, you know, there was nobody around him, and when I walked up to say hello and just tell him how much I enjoyed Star Trek, I realized why there was nobody around him, because he was just a turd. I did take his picture. I did not get my picture taken with him because, you know, he was so mean that I didn't really relish the thought of having my picture made with him. So after I've talked to other people in the last few years who also met him, it's very, you know, at least I wasn't tripping, you know, thinking he was a jerk. Like he did. It was kind of no fun. So anyway, I also have never found him particularly appealing. In general, I don't think he's very attractive. Apparently, one of the reasons they put him on Star Trek when he first got on it was because they thought he looked like Davy Jones from the Monkees. And he was the youngest member of the cast, I believe, and he had never even watched Star Trek when he got hired to be on it, so he was kind of a little bit, I don't know, like he was almost condescending, like, I guess I'll be in this Star Trek thing because I think I look like one of the Monkees. Anyway, he just, there's, my favorite thing he ever did is the nuclear vessels scene in Star Trek 6. That's probably the funniest thing he's ever done, and it's just some of his stuff in Star Trek 6, or not Star Trek 6, Star Trek 4, I'm sorry. Some of that's really funny and fun. I don't know how this times out with the making of Star Trek 5. Maybe he was so depressed after making Star Trek 5 that he's like, I'll do anything, so I don't know. But yeah, his acting isn't great. He's not very appealing in general. And I do not find him an attractive leading man. He just doesn't have that kind of charisma or energy. But, hey, they got him because he was a Star Trek guy, and telling your story about everybody, I guess they had to draw straws for who would let him, sleep on their couch every weekend, so that's kind of a funny story, but, yeah, and the actress who played Mira, she was alright, she's reasonably good looking, and yeah, I'm not talking about her with her clothes off, which that was a common thing to do in the 80s, was, if your movie's not quite edgy enough, you just do a little bit more to get the R rating or whatever, and it seemed like no matter what kind of movie it was back then, they thought that that was how you appealed to a certain age demographic, was that you threw in some of that no matter what the movie was about. And I think the only purpose for that weird blow-up, bounce house room was so that they could have a make-out scene between her and Jason, because that was pretty gratuitous. Like, they would be like, oh, we're on our way back to wherever, but we're just going to stop here and pout a little bit, and while we do that, we're going to just, start making out. So, whatever, man. I can't imagine her wanting to make it with some, Apollo astronaut who hasn't bathed in a week. So yeah, crazy. Let me see, what else do I have on acting and characters. Most of the other characters were forgettable and mostly bit parts. There was a very few people in this, so there's not a whole lot of else to say. Other guy who got killed, that was sad because he was more likable and a better actor than Cop. And the astronauts who decided they were going to fly up with the tricked out, space shuttle that had militarized weaponry on it, they were okay. They were kind of likable. I guess they were supposed to almost looked like they were supposed to represent, Sally Ride and, what's-his-face, who was the first black astronaut, and I'm sorry, I can't remember his name. I actually just listened to a really good book, speaking of book recommendations. It's not the happiest book ever, but it's a really good book just called Challenger, and it's about the whole history of everything behind players that went into the whole Challenger thing, the whole Challenger disaster in 1986. A really, really good book. Highly recommend. Anyway, yeah, not great in general, and yeah, Walter Koenig is just not a whole lot of fun, no matter how you slice it. I think maybe with a better actor in the leading man part who could deliver the melodrama and even some of the comedy in this, it might have been more fun to watch. It might have been, it can't really decide exactly what it wants to be, whether it wants to be horror or, I think it's trying to be horror, and then it has the almost exploitation moment where they're shackled down and the robot is practically about to rip her clothes off, and, it's just, bleh. So, anyway, yeah, fair to middling to bad in general. Most of the other characters at the beginning of the movie and the NASA people, they're just unrememberable. So that's all I have to say. NV5F.
All right, thank you, Virginia. And next up is Thomas, KI5JCM. Thomas, your thoughts on characterization and acting for Moontrap from 1988. This is KE5ICX. KI5JCM. Thomas, you still out there? It's getting close to the witching hour, so I think people are starting to fall out a little bit. So I'll go on to Sean, KB9SOK. Sean, same question to you. Characterization and acting, what do you think?
Yeah, this is KB9SOK. Well, not a whole lot to add in this front. Obviously, the characters were all pretty one-dimensional. Just a super cheesy science fiction slash action slash horror movie. Walter didn't do a very good job, but yeah, I agree. He hasn't done very well in anything that I've seen him do, so Bruce Campbell didn't have a whole lot to work with there. The girl, I've seen her, I think, in some TV stuff before, back in that time frame. She did fine. Most of her scenes were non-talking, so not a lot to do there. And then, all the others were just kind of extra. The guy that was supposed to be the liaison to the government for funding, he was pretty lame. It's just pretty much, pretty lame acting across the board, pretty lame characters. Not a lot to add here, so I won't drag it out. Back to net, KB9SOK.
All right, thank you, Sean. I don't have a lot to add either, and I've never been a big fan of Walter Koenig and his acting, but I will make an exception, and this is an interesting exception, since we're talking about him tonight. I don't think a lot of people know that he was in a starring role in one of the episodes from Alfred Hitchcock Hour from 1964. And it was where he plays a gang leader, and main character along with James Caan. Everybody remembers him. He did some television work back in the 60s. And it was a story called Memo from Purgatory, which was written by Harlan Ellison. Yes, that Harlan Ellison. And it did involve his time when he infiltrated a gang, a youth gang in New York, and it's semi-autobiographical, and I did read, he did write a book about his experiences, and I read it back when I was in high school. It's so many years ago, I don't remember a lot of the details, but it's actually a pretty good production. If you get a chance to watch it, and you can, it's available online streaming. I think Pluto has it, or it may be on YouTube. Either place, just type in streaming Memo from Purgatory, and you'll see he does a pretty darn good job, actually a sympathetic character in the thing. So he had some acting chops. I don't know how deep. I kind of think that Walter Koenig is one of those method actors. His only method is Walter Koenig, so he plays his characters the same. So in this one, he is more sympathetic towards the end. He's supposed to be a tough guy. He's also the shortest guy in the bunch, so there's that. So I don't know how tough you look in a leather jacket when everybody around you is towering over you, but that's neither here nor there. Harlan Ellison wasn't very big either. He managed to hold his own in fights, which there's whole stories about him and all that stuff too, which apparently are true. They seem far-fetched and hard to believe, but people have corroborated those stories in the past, and apparently they're true. He was a scrappy guy. Let's see, anything else? I don't mind, pithy things by characters, but the writing has got to be good in order to make that work, and the acting has to be able to deliver it with some sort of self-confidence. But if the writing isn't there, it's just not worth it in the end, and it just isn't there. It is a derivative story, therefore the actors aren't going to get as much involved. Bruce Campbell is good, and I agree that he can turn something into something good. I put it in quotes, but if the original script isn't all that great, not going to work, folks. And that's how I kind of felt about it. So I liked him in the, the Evil Dead series, which, by the way, there's a connection to this movie. I think the director of this thing ended up doing one of the Evil Dead movies with Bruce Campbell, and that may be why along the way. So there's some information. I'm going to do something on music here in a little bit, which was kind of a surprise for the terrible music. The guy goes on and does a pretty good job on other motion pictures. Okay. See here, what time is it? 11:48. I'm going to say the list is medium long. So what I'm going to do is, if you have something on, and give me your call sign, and I'll go down the list. So please come now if you got comments for round 3.
November Tango 5, Tango Mike, Tony with comments for round 3.
MV5F.
WV5OZL.
BB.
Okay, let's go with those. I've got Tony, NT5M, MV5F, WV5OZL, and N5BB. We'll start with Tony. Go!
So, I found the music very annoying, and I hated, and I mean hated, the spacesuit costumes. They looked like something my best high school friend's mother sewed. Yes, those production notes that I sent to the Facebook group, the people who made this movie bragged that they did put all the seams in the right place, but they sure used hideously unrealistic materials. One of my favorite bits of trivia about Apollo 13 was they actually had to make working cooling units for their fake spacesuits, because to produce a spacesuit that moves realistically, you have to make a really stiff underlayer, and then that moves in one kind of way, and then a very thick, stiff outer layer, the micrometeorite protection, that moves another way. And when you wear both those, it turns out to be really hot and hard to breathe in. So they had to make working cooling units for the astronauts. Well, the actors. These spacesuits they were just so ridiculous. I kept waiting to see some little polyester batting pop out of somewhere. The music was awful, but the costuming was just, it hurt. NT5TM.
Yeah, thank you, Tony. By the way, the spacesuits never got dirty on that dirty, filthy moon, and all of the fighting that went on, they never got dirty. Okay, Virginia, NV5F, you're up.
Okay, let's see. Yeah, I'm with Tony. The spacesuits were kind of cheesy. The music was terrible. It's dreary and boring. It just sounded like someone said. It sounded like someone with just a Casio keyboard, like playing random, notes at times. Yeah, they had the same problem on this movie that they have on a lot of science fiction movies. They have a shot or two of trying to do correct low or microgravity, and then they just kind of give up, and then the gravity just becomes normal. And whenever people are super beholden to Stanley Kubrick, like everything he did is genius and perfect, I'm like, have you seen 2001? Like, the gravity inconsistencies aboard the Discovery are outrageous. But yeah, so they had that problem, and then I'm gonna spin off of Tony's spacesuit cooling remarks and say that in 2001 they had such great spacesuits, but they didn't have they should have had cooling and even oxygen supply, because one of the stuntmen who did stunt work in the spacesuit was just, it was so uncomfortable and so horrible, and Stanley Kubrick would just leave him hanging on wires forever and ever, and he couldn't breathe, and he was hot and sweaty, and he was running out of oxygen, and I think at one point he actually passed out, and he was a former mercenary of some kind, and he was so mad at Stanley Kubrick that after they brought him down from the wires, he was so angry that Stanley Kubrick left town for 2 or 3 days because he was afraid the guy was gonna hurt him. So I thought, that's a pretty funny 2001 story, which is kind of an aside to an idea that Tom came up with at Field Day about a month ago about making a comedic documentary about all the people who are mad at Stanley Kubrick. Anyway, yeah, overall just lots of cheese in this, and cheesy music, cheesy costumes, stuff that just doesn't work. But yeah, those are my comments. I think that they tried to at least do something decent with the space shuttle, but their little space shuttle, it looked almost as bad as the space shuttle model that I built when I was 14. So, yeah, all the little spaceships except for the CSM looked pretty horrible. Back to net, NV5F.
Thank you for saying it. Yeah, all the spaceships look terrible in this thing. They look like little toys, which is what they are. WV5OZL, Brenda, you're up.
Well, this movie suffered from having a budget of only $3 million and something. They couldn't even put the actors up in hotels. And it really shows. My feeling is if you don't have a big enough budget to make a movie, just don't do it. Get the money back and go home. There's just almost no way to recover from low budget. Everything looks horrible, and then nobody likes the movie, and everybody talks about how bad it is. We were talking about the acting. Bruce Campbell mostly plays Bruce Campbell and everything, but he's so entertaining we don't mind. But if you haven't seen a movie called Bubba Hotep, it's a little different for him. He plays Elvis Presley, and it's kind of different, kind of offbeat, but it's a whole lot of fun. So check it out. Back to net, WV5OZL.
Oops, I don't think that works. Let me try again. Bill, you're next. N5BB.
Thank you, Tom. This is N5BB. Well, as mentioned by others, the special effects were pretty lousy. I'll amplify that. When they showed the Walter Koenig and Mira out in space together in front of the alien spacecraft, it was comical. They were like dragging them along. They were kind of coupled together like a little cartoon image, and they were dragging it along, and it looked so comical. It was just so weird. There were other similar things. When they were on the moon, to me that didn't look like the moon. they use some kind of filter on the camera to make it kind of gray, gray and white. And I noticed when there were colors on their spacesuits, like the American flag, but the filters they used made it look kind of dirty red, kind of a gray red. So, I don't know. The whole effect I didn't like. It didn't appear to me to be very moon-like. It's been 15 to 20 years since, we had knowledge about astronauts on the moon and pictures of all that. I would have thought they could have made it a little bit better. And I did not understand when they got over the hill, I guess the best way of describing it, and they saw the ancient human place they went into, their lair, or what do you want to call it, which was kind of at an angle on the side of a hill or crater or something. He said, well, that's why we didn't notice it from orbit. And I did not understand that comment. To me, that would have been very noticeable from orbit. It was huge. And I didn't understand why they said it would not be visible from orbit. That seemed to be completely wrong by what it looked like. Also, the little lunar buggy they were going around, its battery ran out. They were worried about it. But did they seem worried about running out of their spacesuit battery or oxygen? Heck no. No comment about it anywhere. Mira's little backpack had been like 18 or however many, 18,000 years old. No concern there either. And no concern about it working. I mean, it's been sitting there that long and it worked perfectly. Again, they just kind of closed their eyes and kind of stuck their tongue in their cheek and kind of ignored all the real things, which of course many of these science fiction movies do. But this was attempting to be better. It was supposed to be, we know about going to the moon. We've done it with Apollo. So we're going to make this rather realistic with Apollo kind of stuff, like 15 years in the future. No, they didn't really make it very realistic at all. Also, as previously mentioned, I think, the whole idea of the lunar excursion module, the lunar lander, I should say, Billye, that which was designed to land and take off from the moon, having any relevance to something landing on the Earth is stupid. Didn't understand that at all. I mean, did you see the size of that spacecraft? What in the world was the lunar excursion module sitting there, which wasn't designed to go through air, make any difference at all? I just didn't understand a lot of that. Made no sense at all. Like the Bruce Campbell that died, and they got his face or something for... He wasn't alive there. He couldn't have been. As part of the cyborg. That made no sense at all. Anyway. Cheap movie, cheap plot, cheap dialogue, cheap actors in 5BB. That's all I got.
All right, thank you, Bill. I did want to make a comment. I think you're going to find this quite surprising. The terrible music was done by Joseph Loduca. He is Detroit-born, so I think he got some of his start there. He has connection to Evil Dead, as does Bruce Campbell. He did the music for Evil Dead in 1981 and I think 88 for Evil Dead 2. So there's a connection there as well. But since then, he's done music for television series Spartacus, Leverage, Hercules, The Legendary Journey, Xena, Warrior Princess, Young Hercules, and The Librarian. He's also done American Gothic and Jack of All Trades. He won an award for jazz music as a jazz guitarist called Listen, Jazz LP. He's won Saturn and Caesar Awards and International Film Awards for Brotherhood of the Wolf and Army of Darkness. So, and if you go and look at his thing, he's got dozens and dozens of mostly television stuff. He-Man, Boogeyman. Some of these are like syndicated shows, but it goes on and on and on. He actually, and some of this music I've heard is pretty good. So this one outing, as terrible as it was, probably is not emblematic of his abilities. Certainly, he's a much better musician and composer than I ever imagined. I don't know this guy as well as I do other people because these are lesser known works, but I have seen these things and I have listened to the music, and incidental and otherwise, they're pretty good stuff. So he's got 2 Primetime Emmy Awards, 11 Primetime Emmy nominations. I mean, the guy is everywhere. Quite a surprise. All right. Well, with that, we're going to say good night. Let me reset. To Moonfall. I figured we might as well continue with the moon thing, but it may have been pulled. I'm not sure if it's available. If not, I'll find another film and I will put it out. So if you're listening and you're not on the email list that I send out Sunday mornings, just to send an email to me at my call sign, Kilo Echo 5 India Charlie X-Ray, KE5ICX at yahoo.com. Tell me that you want on the list for Afterglow movie, and I'll make sure that you're on there. Everyone else, you know the drill. I will send out the info on the movie and the links to that movie for next week. So tentatively, it's called Moonfall from I don't know what year it came out, 2020, I think, something like that. That's it for me tonight. I say 7-3, and I'm going to go to bed. It's been a long, long day for me. See y'all. KE5ICX clear.
Thank you as always. Sleep well. NT5TM.
Good night, everyone. And Tom, I think I might start putting the week's movie up on Discord since the Facebook thing isn't working. Maybe that'll help more people know when it is. So I'll try to do that tomorrow. And I'm going to go watch a podcast on YouTube called Bad Movies Rule, which is really funny. And there's old movies that are kind of bad, they're big budget, still kind of not great. These guys talk about them. It's pretty funny. NT5F.